Great. So moving on to our second myth, which is that ULAs are cost effective. And I can see how this would be an easy one to imagine, considering it's, you know, that whole unlimited aspect of it. But the reality, from what I understand, is that they're not so cost effective, especially when it comes to renewals. Mark Smith, could you take us through this?
Sure, thanks, Dan. And this example, what we're going to do is just run you through a typical customer and how they might engage and get into a ULA, and what it might kind of cost them, and how things roll on, and how it becomes more and more expensive. So in this example, there's a customer, let's say they've got some existing Oracle licenses and they're paying something like £1 million a year in support. And they know they're going to do a lot of projects, and so they go on again, agreement with Oracle for a ULA for a 3-year term. So what then happens is Oracle will encourage that customer to roll that existing license and support into the support for the main new agreement. And the reason for that is so that the customer has one invoice from Oracle. So that all sounds good. So the customer says, right, okay, I'm going to buy £10 million worth of licenses to allow me to deploy, let's say, 3 systems. And the support on that, let's say, is around about 2 million. So I'll be paying 3 million a year for support because I've rolled my 1 million in, and that's all fine. So now you're on that journey, you've got your licenses and you're paying £3 million a year for support. So roll forward 3 years, and all those projects that you were going to deliver, let's say that you only managed to deliver something like half of what you intended. So it comes to the end of the 3-year term, and you say to Oracle, right, I'd like to certify out. And the gotcha there is that Oracle say, right, that's fine. So certify what products have you used, what products are actually live and operational. And because they're the ones that you can certify. You can't certify ones unless they're on a live system and in use. So you say to Oracle, well, I've only actually deployed maybe half of this. So but I've nearly finished the latest project to deploy all of it. And so Oracle will say to you, well, that's fine, but at this point of certification, you've only deployed half the licenses, so your grant is half. So you're now thinking, well, hang on a minute, I've spent 10 million on this, and I've only deployed £5 million worth of licenses, so I'm out of pocket. So what Oracle will then say to you is, well, why don't we sell you a new ULA to extend it so you can finish that project and everything be good. So you then say, well, okay, so how do I do that? And Oracle say, well, you need to buy another £10 million worth of ULA, and we'll put some other stuff in there, so we'll kind of sweeten the deal for you. But you need a new ULA to roll over and then enable your next project. So you can see that there's a gravy train starting to leave the station, where this thing is never going to actually end, and you can end up in a perpetual cycle of ULAs. So if you come to that point and you extend the ULA and you say, okay, I'll bite the bullet, I'll do some more projects, they're going to charge you 10 million for, let's say, in this scenario, and then another 2 million for that support. So your support going forward now is 5 million, and you're investing another 10 of capex. And if you ask Oracle at this point, you say, well, hang on a second, I thought this was kind of an all-you-can-eat buffet. Oracle's response to that is, well, it is an all-you-can-eat buffet, but you came and you only had a starter, and that's not my fault. So their logic is they're going to charge you again. You're going to go to the all-you-can-eat buffet again, and hopefully this time you'll get it right. But you know what? If you don't get it right, and this happens again and again and again, you can see those support costs are stacking, and that can go on pretty much forever. So this is how a ULA becomes not only really expensive for you, the customer, but why Oracle love them so much is because they're stacking, and there is no end in sight. And so in order to manage that ULA, you can see that you really need to be on top of everything. And this is why this whole webinar talks about how serious these things are. And, there's loads of organizations trapped in these things, and they are costing millions and millions and millions. And, if you don't certify out and you get the audit threat, and then you agree to another ULA, how do you actually get out of this? Mark, is this the sort of thing that you see a lot?
It's like a treadmill, isn't it? It's like the hamster wheel. You get on and it just keeps going and it keeps going. Of course, Oracle want you to do that. They love this financial licensing model. It's perfect for them. So why not? Keep renewing, keep adding, keep renewing, keeps out the competition, all the things we've said before on the webinar. And is it cost effective? For a very small subset of Oracle clients, it is. For those fast-growing, fast-deploying organizations, yes, this can be an incredibly attractive, cost-effective model. for a large majority of ULA clients, especially now with pandemic and the economy where it is, and it's going to be a couple of 3 years of bumpiness going forward, you know, should you be in a model like this? It's a big question mark, isn't it? And I just want a quick thing I just wanted to point out, because I got asked this by a client not so long ago. I mean, in February, whenever it was. It was you know, they were looking at a ULA, and they were talking about, you know, when you get into it, you know, the existing perpetual licenses you got, when you go into the ULA, those existing licenses get terminated. They just disappear into smoke. And because, you know, you put those effectively the licenses and the support stream into the ULA. But they were under the illusion, I don't know where they got it from. They thought they could do a ULA and then come out of it and they still have those perpetual licenses because they're perpetual, aren't they? Aren't they as right to use forever? And I said, no. When you go in, they get terminated, so they're gone. So you can't go back to them and just say, Oracle, you know, we're going to use the old perpetual licenses and not pay support, which is their original thinking. I really don't know where they got it from, but it was a bit of a rude awakening for them. So for them, they then chose not to go into a ULA. You know, they were going into it for all the wrong reasons because they'd taken bad advice from somewhere. So, you know, do understand how you get in, what the implications are, as Mark's just outlined, in terms of how these things go and how these things grow. And of course, you need to know that you can get out of it at an appropriate time when it's right for your business to do so, or when the economy forces you to do so. But, you know, are they cost effective? Yes, for a small number of Oracle ULA users. I suspect for the vast majority of them, certainly now, they're proven to be quite financially expensive licensing models.
One thing I wanted to add there, Mark, was if we consider what happens to an Oracle estate over time. So because you're starting to roll your licenses together into, you know, ULAs that are topping each other, and you've got what Oracle calls the total support stream. Basically, those products and those licensing there, you can't take them out. So, you know, if you first ULA and the second ULA stacked up there, and you've maybe got licenses for 150 CPUs, but you then decide that you're going to retire one system, and you know, maybe it's a huge system, and you lose 50 CPUs. Oracle will not reduce the price. So you'll go back to Oracle and say, well, look, Mr. Oracle, I only need 100 CPUs now on my ULA. Oracle will say, well, guess what? When you negotiated this with me in the first place, I gave you a great deal. So if you want to reduce the number of licenses you hold, we can do that for you, but the price is probably not going to go down. So you end up in a situation where you've got this whole license grant and older systems are retiring, but you're still paying support and maintenance on software that you're not using. So it's a really difficult thing to manage, and you need to really understand all these nuances if you're going to make a success of managing your ULA.
Just following up on your initial point there, Marques, around the stacking of those support costs, and as you've shown, you go from 1 million pre-ULA all the way up to 5 million after the first renewal. What happens after that ULA if that organization certified out? Do they go back to the 1 million? What happens?
Thanks, Sam. Well, I'm sure any Oracle customer will recognize that Oracle never charge you less this year than they did last year. So, you know, you're always going to be stuck in that stream, unfortunately. You know, if that ULA stream is built up from 1 million to 3 million to 5 million, you're always going to be paying at least 5 million. And then there are 4% increases a year, right up until the point that, you know, even if you certify out, you're still using those licenses. So the only way to actually reduce that in the end is to look away from Oracle to another vendor, somebody like Support Revolution, who offer third-party support. That's the way that you could reduce the cost. But Oracle are not going to come in there and offer to reduce the cost year on year because you're using less licenses. So I guess the other way of making it more cost effective for yourself is by deploying those licenses on new systems, which you certainly can do. But as we said before, you're probably deploying old tech now. So, you know, have you really got, I don't know, let's say you've got a 50 CPU licenses spare. Is there a new system that ideally you would want to build on Oracle? Probably not. So, you know, it is a difficult situation, but you are, whatever bill you've got stuck at the end of your ULA with, that's going to be basically a forever bill until you leave Oracle.